It's where my wife and I met and where we're raising our family. Let's not settle. Let's lead the nation.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. The new developments in that shooting attack at YouTube headquarters. What we're learning about the female gunman. The bizarre videos she posted. Her vendetta against that company. Authorities tonight revealing she went to a gun range hours earlier. Deploying the troops. The military response to illegal immigration. President Trump orders the National Guard to the southern border. They could be heading there as soon as tonight. Facebook scandal. The personal data of tens of millions more users potentially compromised, more than first reported. How Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg just responded. Plus, the NFL star who police say may have prevented a school shooting. The threatening post discovered on his social media account. The student arrested. And honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. From here in Memphis and across the country. The nation pays tribute to the civil rights leader 50 years after his assassination, honoring the legacy of his mission still being fought today.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir. Reporting tonight from Memphis, Tom Yamas.
Good evening and welcome to World News Tonight. And we have come here to Memphis where 50 years ago, this very hour, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed by an assassin's bullet as he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. It happened directly in front of his room, just steps from where we're broadcasting tonight, room 306. There have been solemn tributes all day long and powerful marches. We'll have much more of the tributes and Dr. King's legacy later in the broadcast. But we begin right now with new details of that troubling attack at YouTube headquarters in California. The gunwoman's strange YouTube videos, her visit to a shooting range just before the attack. ABC senior national correspondent Matt Gutman is on the scene tonight.
Tonight, investigators revealing Nasim Aghdam broadcast her motive right on her very target's website.
I'm being discriminated and filtered on YouTube.
Aghdam racked up millions of views on her YouTube channel with her sometimes bizarre antics, dressing in costumes, exercising,
Go vegan.
promoting veganism, dancing next to photos of fruit and farm animals, and ranting that YouTube had begun to censor her, limiting her viewers and therefore her livelihood, claiming she made only 10 cents for more than 300,000 views.
My old videos that used to get many views, I stopped getting views.
Police say it was apparently motive enough to launch the 39-year-old on a suicide mission. Tonight, we learned she disappeared from home in San Diego, her family filing a missing persons report on Saturday. Police in Mountain View, California, finding Aghdam the morning of the shooting, sleeping in her car, hundreds of miles from home, but just 30 miles from YouTube's headquarters. What they say they didn't know, she was packing a 9mm handgun and a vendetta against YouTube. The police chief tells us that when the officers told the family their daughter was fine, they warned the officers that she may have traveled to Mountain View because of her gripe against YouTube.
Did the family in any way suggest that she could be violent or had been violent or would be violent?
There was no information at all from the family to our officer about any behavior or indication of behavior like that.
Then at 12:46, Aghdam apparently slipping into this garage, making entry into YouTube's campus.
Confirming she is the suspect.
Affirm, that's what we were told.
I saw her, and it was a woman, and she was firing her gun. And I just said, shoot her, and everybody started running.
Officers there within 2 minutes. This one snapping up his rifle and sprinting inside, let in by that employee. But by then, Aghdam had already killed herself. Outside the family's home today, the shooter's father simply saying he's sorry.
I'm sorry, I can't believe it.
Today, police with guns drawn searching a home in San Diego connected to Aghdam. Authorities carrying away bags of clothes from a dumpster. A neighbor saying it appeared Aghdam threw away some of the clothes she wore in these videos just days before her rampage.
And Matt Gutman joins us live outside YouTube's office in San Bruno. Matt, authorities tonight searching for clues and poring over those videos and telling you they've learned troubling details about the shooter's past?
That's right, Tom. Federal law enforcement officials tell me they are still involved in this case because when they delved into her background, they found some red flags. For instance, she got a pilot's license from the FAA just 2 days after 9/11, and some of her online activism also raised concern. But they are telling us tonight they are nearly certain she was not affiliated with any domestic or foreign terrorist groups. Tom.
Matt Gutman with those new developments tonight. Matt, thank you. Next, Facebook's privacy scandal, larger than first reported. On a conference call this afternoon, CEO Mark Zuckerberg with the new number and their plans to protect users' private information. ABC's chief business and economics correspondent Rebecca Jarvis has more.
Tonight, Facebook revealing up to 87 million people, mostly in the U.S., may have had their information improperly shared with political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica. Far more than the 50 million initially suspected. Today, CEO Mark Zuckerberg in a call with reporters acknowledging the company didn't focus enough on preventing abuse.
We didn't take a broad enough view of what our responsibility is, and that was a huge mistake. It was my mistake.
Starting Monday, Facebook will tell users if their information may have been shared with Cambridge Analytica by adding a link at the top of the newsfeed. The tech titan also announcing several other changes, including restricting access for third-party apps and deleting phone and text logs after a year. Tom, Mark Zuckerberg says that 87 million figure is the maximum number of people impacted. Cambridge Analytica responding tonight that they accessed the data of no more than 30 million people and deleted it when they were contacted by Facebook. Tom?
Rebecca Jarvis for us tonight. Rebecca, thank you. Next, a stunning announcement from the White House. National Guard troops will head to the border with Mexico as soon as tonight. And it comes as sources say Special Counsel Robert Mueller told the president's legal team in recent weeks that he was under investigation. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl.
A day after the president surprised his own top advisors by floating the idea of using the military to secure the border with Mexico,
we're going to be guarding our border with the military.
The White House made it official, announcing he is signing the order and the National Guard could be on its way as early as tonight.
We do hope that the deployment begins immediately.
The Homeland Security Secretary could not say how many troops or how much it would cost. As for what they'll do, U.S. troops cannot do law enforcement functions such as arresting illegal border crossers. This would be a support role, such as helping with surveillance.
It will be strong. It will be as many as is needed to fill the gaps that we have today, is what I can tell you. So we'll go through and make sure.
Just last week, the president also suggested he would use military funds to build his border wall.
Does the president have the authority to use money that Congress has appropriated to the Department of Defense to build the border wall?
What he meant was there are some lands that the Department of Defense owns that right on the border that are actually areas where we see illicit activity. We're looking into options for the military to build wall on military installations on the border.
But Pentagon officials tell ABC News the U.S. military has no land on the Mexican border. The closest is the Air Force's Goldwater practice range in Arizona, which is not actually on the border. Meanwhile, regarding the special counsel investigation, ABC News has confirmed President Trump has been informed by Robert Mueller's team that he is not, at this point, a criminal target of the investigation, but he is a subject of the investigation, and therefore Mueller wants to interview him.
And what was his reaction to learning that he is not a subject, or that he is not a target of the special counsel investigation, although he is a subject?
We know what we did and what we didn't do, so none of this comes as much of a surprise.
All right, Jonathan Karl joins us now. The president has said he's eager to talk to the special counsel, but that's something that has divided his legal team. John, where does that stand tonight?
Well, some of his legal advisors have told him point blank it would be a terrible idea to talk to Robert Mueller. But as you point out, the president himself has said repeatedly that he is willing, even eager to talk to Mueller and would do so under oath. The White House has said nothing, Tom, to suggest that that has changed.
Jonathan Karl for us tonight. Jonathan, thank you. Also from the White House tonight, a statement on U.S. policy in Syria after the president said he wanted to pull U.S. troops out, quote, very soon. That statement walking back the president's call indicating no change in policy and no timeline for withdrawal. Tonight, about 2,000 American troops remain in Syria to train and advise in the fight against ISIS. And the trade conflict heating up between the U.S. and China. The Trump administration proposing import taxes on Chinese electronics and machinery products. Within hours, China striking back against American soybeans, cars, and chemicals. The president's new chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, insisting it is not a trade war, but an opportunity to renegotiate. Still, American farmers and tech companies are expressing alarm. We turn now to the weather. 7 confirmed tornadoes in the past 24 hours, and tonight wind and cold alerts for 23 states. This dramatic cloud near Columbus, Ohio, violent storms damaging hundreds of homes there, and shattering this hangar at Houston's Hobby Airport. And when the storm clears out, another blast of winter is right behind it. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano at the Weather Wall in New York. Rob, good evening.
Good evening, Tom. The air behind this current system is cold enough to bring us lake-enhanced snow showers in the month of April. Big winds as well, potentially doing damage and certainly delaying flights across the Northeast. High wind warnings up until after midnight and freeze warnings across the Mid-South. Look at these numbers in the morning. Wind chills in the teens and 20s from Chicago to Pittsburgh to New York City. Certainly cold enough to sustain snow. We've got another snowmaker that'll ride across the Great Lakes and get into upstate New York by Friday morning. Another system potentially bringing snow as far south as D.C. on Saturday. Tom?
Even more snow will stay tracking those storms. Okay, Rob, thank you. Across the country today, those tributes to the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., marking one of America's darkest days and finding ways to see hope. ABC's Steve Osunsami is in Atlanta tonight.
In the powerful words of this preacher from Atlanta who changed America, tonight across the country there are little black boys and black girls joining hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. At the nation's capital, in the Northeast, in the South, carrying signs from half a century ago. This group marched 50 miles from Mississippi to Memphis today to mark the 50 years since Martin Luther King was gunned down.
This symbolizes how we've moved forward.
There were celebrations at the National Civil Rights Museum, what used to be the Lorraine Motel, where this heartbreaking photo was taken.
He stood for so much. He stood for all these people, such love.
In the heartland today, Congressman John Lewis, who marched with Dr. King, spoke in Indianapolis.
I thank God that he lived. He taught us how to live. He taught us how to stand up.
At his gravesite in Atlanta, King's youngest daughter spoke out against shootings and police profilings. At a rally, she and the crowd melted a gun.
America's got to find a way to value life. When you look at the black men being gunned down by law enforcement officers, it's very troubling.
Her father has a legacy. At the youth rally against gun violence in Washington in March, King's 9-year-old granddaughter carried the family's message.
I have a dream that enough is enough.
The King family says that the words in their father's most famous speech from 1963 mean just as much today.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Still so powerful, so many decades later. Steve Osunsami joining us from Atlanta, Dr. King's hometown. And we saw you spend time with his daughter, Bernice King, today. Passionate, of course, about gun violence. Of course, losing her father to gun violence. But she says his mission continues, and it's much broader.
That's right, Tom. Not just gun violence, but also income equality, poverty, and what she says is voter suppression. It's hard to imagine how things would have been different if her father, who is buried directly behind me, were alive today. Tom?
Steve Osunsami for us tonight from Atlanta. Steve, thank you. And later in the newscast, we'll hear from the Memphis sanitation worker who heard Dr. King's last speech and is still on the job for the city today. And there's still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Wednesday. The burning car on the side of the road. The Good Samaritans trying to rescue the driver trapped by the flames. Plus, the new surveillance image just released. The driver seen hours before police say she drove her family over a cliff. And the NFL star who may have prevented a school shooting. The threatening post discovered on his social media account. Stay with us.
If you have moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, little things can be a big deal. That's why there's Otezla. Otezla is not an injection or a cream. It's a pill that treats psoriasis differently. With Otezla, 75% clear skin is achievable after just 4 months, with reduced redness, thickness, and scaliness of plaques. And the Otezla prescribing information has no requirement for routine lab monitoring. Don't use if you're allergic to Otezla. Otezla may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Tell your doctor if these occur. Otezla is associated with an increased risk of depression. Tell your doctor if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts or if these feelings develop. Some people taking Otezla reported weight loss. Your doctor should monitor your weight and may stop treatment. Other side effects include upper respiratory tract infection and headache. Tell your doctor about all the medicines you take and if you're pregnant or planning to be. Otezla, show more of you.